When you see pictures of congregations of young people, you obviously have concerns for them. And I was looking at Young People's Ask book, had the book two, Young People Asks the opposite sex, the control that the Watchtower can have over teenagers' lives and deciding what they want to be, whether they want to be the opposite sex, whether they want to know the opposite sex. And then the issue of school peers is again controlling that they must only meet nice people, not people that maybe want to take them out or do things that the Watchtower doesn't agree with. So it wants to control your time with your school peers in everyday life, when your school time in your life is important. And remembering that they're trying to cut you off from assemblies because of religion, Christmas, all those things, maybe the religious education studies, it goes on. Your feelings, your spiritual growth. You're not allowed to have adult feelings. You have to make sure everything as a teenager is your spiritual growth. Not allowed to have feelings that you don't want to be a Jehovah Witness. You don't want to go to the meetings. You don't want to study the Watchtower. You're not allowed to have feelings in sense of making decisions in your teenage life and growing up and developing. You've always got to be controlled by the Watchtower to have spiritual growth that can control you. And then the other book was Sex, Love. Again, a teenager develops and finds out these things in their time. But again, Watchtower wants to control them. And then it says your free time and your worship. Again, even in your free time as a teenager, it wants to control you. And then it wants you to feel guilty to have your worship, making sure that your free time you're spending out preaching or being at the meetings or helping people with studies, so that you're spiritually growing as a Jehovah Witness, controlled as a slave, as a teenager, to the Watchtower. Some of the news headlines for teenagers on blood treatment for a teenager Jehovah Witness. The judge orders the doctor to give the Jehovah Witness a transfusion against her parents' wishes. So the parents claim that they love the child, but they want the child to die from not having a blood transfusion. So we need to keep an eye on the Child Protection Act in our countries to make sure that children and teenagers are protected by that act, even against the parents' decision. Good on the judge. So we see in other bits it's talking about obviously dating, wants to control that. Religion in public schools, again it wants to control. But also there have been many cases of child abuse for children and adult and teenagers in the news, and you can Google it and see that the Watchtower has done nothing to protect the child or the teenager. Again, we need to make sure the Child Act protects, but they're not being protected by the Watchtower. The other parts were, how can you stop living a double life? What's expected when dating young people? Again, the Watchtower. How can I learn to focus? Again, teenagers being controlled by the organisation. How can I learn to focus? Jehovah Witness child chooses to get baptised at the age of 12. Between the age of 12 and 16. How can a 12-year-old make the decision to get baptised and know the 1,000 rules and regulations that are there for them? And if they get baptised and get disfellowshipped, how it's going to affect their family. So we see the court in Norway, when it banned Jehovah Witnesses from being a charitable status and allowed to do weddings, that was one of the reasons, was because it was baptising minors that probably at that age would not be able to have the development for their age. And the other one was that they were disfellowshipping children, and they were also, Jehovah Witnesses were accused, victims were accused of not doing anything about it, victims of child abuse. And I'm sure there are many other things that we could say that concern us about the teenagers that can't live and develop and live their lives and have time to make decisions for themselves without being controlled by the Watchtower. We know that many teenagers are leaving the organisation, and the organisation is trying to change its rules and regulations to try and make the elders younger, but they're still leaving, and you can't blame them, but you got to feel sorry for those that are being controlled by the Watchtower. Is Martin saying bye.